Wow, 10 years you've been with KDKA?
Yeah, it'll be with 10 years coming up later this year. Yep.
Wow.
Yeah, you figured they'd have thrown me out after like 2 years, didn't you? I mean, you see the things that I put on Twitter and you think, this clown is not going to last in this town very long. That's what it came down to, isn't it?
Maybe.
Yeah, see? I knew it. You were on to me.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Donut Bag, part of the Podhub Network. In this episode, it's Super Bowl week, and I had this idea to ask a bunch of celebrities their picks for the Super Bowl, but then I realized I don't know any celebrities. The only celebrity I know is Rick Dayton from KDKA, so I talked to him for a little bit. Then I talked to Lauren Arnone Dodge from BigPlay.com about the best Super Bowl commercials ever. The Donut Bag starts right now. So I was going to do a segment on celebrity Super Bowl picks, but then I realized I don't know any celebrities. The closest thing to a celebrity that I know is Rick Dayton from KDKA. Rick, congratulations. You're the most famous person that I know.
So basically what you're saying is that when you're putting together your who's who, and you put my name out there, we're really rolling the dice that people aren't going to say, who's that? Is that what this comes down to?
Yeah.
I mean, because if I am in your list of, air quote, celebrity, close air quote, then this is going to be a pretty short show.
Yeah. Do
you need me to start flipping through my Rolodex here and sending you some contacts?
I was hoping you had Heather Abraham's number. Or
I've got that one.
Absolutely. Or Selena,
Well, yep, got that one. Who else?
Ron Smiley, he'd be good.
Yeah, that's easy, not a problem. Let me flip to the Mike Krzyzewski. You want that one?
Oh yeah, Coach.
Yeah,
sure.
I've got that one. Paul Alexander. You want that one? Jennifer Antkowiak. You want that one?
Oh. Wow.
Joe Arena from WPXI. I've got that one. What else are you looking at? I mean, you start naming them. I'll let you know whether or not I've got them.
Okay, we got to talk about Joe Arena, because that dude was freezing pants this week.
That's what I hear. I can't watch, but that's just sort of, you see the Twitter feeds that come by and things like that. Joe's a great guy. He really is. But it sounds like they had him out there doing some really, really amazing science experiments.
That is the funny thing about all this cold weather. Everybody's doing their own science experiment. Let's see how things freeze. Let's.
Well, how about this? I give you an idea. Whenever it gets below 32 degrees, water freezes. How about that? When it gets way below 32 degrees, sometimes you throw it up in the air and it freezes faster. Yeah. And if you go like where my kid is in Chicago right now, just don't go outside because it's like 25 degrees below that. And the wind blows about 100 miles an hour because it started somewhere in Manitoba. So yeah, that's boy, what a week it has been for weather lovers. That's for sure.
How is your kid surviving? I mean, we're complaining about it -11. They're -50.
Yeah. Well, see, he's really, really smart, and that's the reason why he's there. He's there going to school, and he is really smart. And one of the things that he told me, he says, I don't go outside. See, it's pretty straightforward, isn't it? It's really, but in all seriousness, I mean, he is in graduate school at Northwestern, and they canceled classes at Northwestern because they just didn't want so many kids end up walking to class and things like that. And the graduate school where he is right downtown Chicago, and just coming in off that lake, it's just vicious. So I mean, they canceled classes, and they just. In some places they say, well, you can deal with it. Minneapolis, you go up there, and there were places there where we were having reports that were 65 and 70 below zero this morning, and it's just absolutely staggering to think about those numbers. But so much of that city is sort of built as catacombs underneath, or tubes, or things that go up above, and you go from one building to the next without ever going outside. I mean, because they realize that you're going to have that in the wintertime. So you have to sort of. It's always funny to me when you ask people how long they've lived in Chicago. They refer to it by the number of winters that they have survived. Oh, I've been here 8 winters. It's not that I've lived here 8 years. I've lived here 8 winters, because you really do. It's a badge of courage that you add another notch, if you will, to to your belt that, there we go, we made another winner through Chicago. So, and I think Chicago basically winter ends sometime about the middle of June, usually about the same time that the Pirates are deciding whether or not they're going to be trading players away in July.
When they don't see snow in Wrigley Field anymore, it's like, oh, well, what should we do about our team this year?
Yeah, right. That's right. They can start to figure those things out. So anyway, we've gone 1,000 different directions, and I'm sure we're none of the things you really wanted to talk about.
Yeah, it's supposed to be a Super Bowl segment.
I'm the one. I'm the one celebrity.
You are the celebrity.
There we go.
What do you do for the Super Bowl?
For a living? That's a really good question.
What do you do for the Super Bowl? Do you go out? Do you go to parties? Do you just stay home?
You know what? I'm a stay-at-home and watch it guy. I absolutely am. And the reason being, and we used to go out and you go to Super Bowl parties and all that sort of stuff, and people all over the place. And I would find myself getting mad because I wanted to watch the game. And there were so many other people that were there that didn't care about the game, either because, A, their team wasn't in it, or they just don't care that much about football, and they just wanted to go and hang out and be social. And that's fine. That's great. I'm not saying that you shouldn't do it that way. And there are times that, that you may go somewhere and you may want to watch, a bowl game, or you may want to hang out with, friends and things like that. And if you really don't care that much about the game, that's fine. But kind of for me, I was in sports for a long time before I switched to news. So for me, I knew that I was going to be doing stories about it perhaps the next day or the next morning. And so I wanted to be able to talk intelligently about it. Or if I was doing a talk show, I wanted to be able to answer questions and take calls and things like that the next day on what happened. So I would sort of find myself getting annoyed. So I just sort of then got in the habit of just sort of watching it at home. And, we have 3 boys, and they'd always want to stay up and watch and that sort of stuff. But it's been harder and harder to watch here the last couple of years since I've come to Pittsburgh and am doing morning news. When the alarm clock goes off at 2:35 or 2:25 or whatever time it is in the morning, and you're thinking, well, the game just got over at like 11 or 11:30 the night before, it's really, really hard to stay up and watch the whole thing. It makes it tougher and tougher. So I don't want to say that I'm happy that the Steelers aren't in it, but it means that I get more sleep and I won't look like I stayed up all night long if the Steelers aren't in the game. It makes for a more rested-looking Rick Dayton on TV in the morning.
Yeah, that is an interesting schedule you have. I mean, on the plus side, when are you done with work? What like 2:00?
Usually by lunchtime. Yeah, usually around 12:30. Yeah, exactly. So, when most people are going to lunch, I'm done. I'm going home. So, I can go to the gym, I can go do whatever, and I'm done by the time that they're going back to the office. But it means that I can play golf in the summertime at 12:30 or 1:00 in the afternoon, and there's nobody there, which is great. And it also meant that when the kids were little and the kids were in high school, they were baseball players or football or whatever. When they were playing baseball games at 3:00 in the afternoon, I might have been one of only 2 or 3 dads who was there for every single game because I was already done with work, and other people would have to take time off to come see those things. So, that was one of the reasons why mornings was a great opportunity, to come to KDKA 10 years ago, because it fit really, really well with being a dad who had young athletes who were involved in so many different sports.
Wow, 10 years you've been with KDKA?
Yeah, it'll be with 10 years coming up later this year. Yep.
Wow.
Yeah, you figured they'd have thrown me out after like 2 years, didn't you? I mean, you see the things that I put on Twitter and you think, this clown is not going to last in this town very long. That's what it came down to, isn't it?
Maybe.
Yeah, see? I knew it. You're on to me.
Do they tell you, hey, go on Twitter, go on social media, talk to the people, or do they give you any guidance on there, or is it you're just out on your own, you just do what you feel like?
No, I think that, there's an understanding that it is part of the way that information is disseminated now. It's the way that people are consuming a lot of different news. And you just, think about this. It used to be that when the news first started, there was a news broadcast that it would be the 6 p.m. and the 11 p.m. That was it. That's all the news that you had, right? And each one of those was a half-hour program. Now I think KDKA does 10.5 hours of news every day. So we're on the air. When I came to Pittsburgh, we were on at 5. Now we're on at 4:30. And we go until 7 on KDK, and then we do another hour over on Pittsburgh CW from 7 to 8. and then you've got programming like Pittsburgh Today Live, and then you get the noon and the 4 and the 5 and the 6 and the 10 at night and the 11 at night, and you start it all again the next day at 4:30, right? So, people don't necessarily get home in time to watch the 5 o'clock or maybe even the 6 o'clock news because they're at the office, and if you're driving from the office up 28, you know how long that may take you getting home, or in the Parkway East, you may not get home until 7 o'clock and you missed the evening news. So for those people, they may consume and need to get those stories in other ways. And so perhaps it's a link on Twitter, or perhaps it's a story that is out there on Facebook, or perhaps it's something that someone threw on Instagram, or who knows what it is, or the way that they want to consume it. But the point is we've got to get those stories out to them in a lot of different ways. And so perhaps it's watching television, and most people aren't going to DVR the news, but they'll go back and they'll get it some other way. And they still know, what the sources are that they like. So, I think all of us who are in the news business realize we have to get that information to people a lot of different ways. Perhaps it'll be because they're sitting down and watching it, or perhaps it's because they get that information through us via Twitter or via some other social media site.
Yeah, it's amazing how things have changed. And I mean, you talk about you've been with KDKA 10 years. Think about social media wasn't even really around 10 years ago. And
that's true. I mean, and when I started in the news business and things like that, I started in my first broadcast would have been back in 1983. So when you start to think about that, at that point, news was still coming down to us on teletype machines. I mean, that it literally was the old dot matrix printer that it was clattering around, and you would get it, and you'd have to wait and wait and wait and wait, and you knew that the national update came down at this time, and the state update came at this time, and sports came at that time, and you'd have to literally go over there and rip off the copy that was there so that you would have that information. That wasn't coming to you on a computer screen. No, that just did not exist. And so that was the way that you got that information. And it's either that or you had the newspaper from that day that perhaps you had some of that information. So, for those of us who are radio or TV or things like that, all that time ago, it was very, very different than now. News wires come across electronically, and websites and Twitter and Facebook and all these different, ways that you can get information. And then the other issue is how do you confirm that information when you get it, et cetera. So, there's a whole lot of issues that are out there in terms of getting information, making sure that it's accurate, knowing that it's been double-checked and it's not just a matter of somebody said that and that it was on the internet, it must be true. We all know that certainly is not the case.
Yeah, it's just such a different world now. And
yes, it is. We sound like old guys. You know that?
Oh gosh, yeah.
We sound like old guys.
We do.
Pretty soon we're going to start talking about Ernie Holmes and John Banaszak and guys like that and L.C. Greenwood, and then we'll sound like really old guys, won't we? Remember when Mike Webster used to play back then with Donnie Shell and used to always be back there, and Glenn Edwards would show up, and Andy Russell? Remember how great he was? And Jack Cam came from Penn State, and they get Lambert from. Remember? Oh, sorry. I guess I'm really sounding like an old guy now.
People do live still through those 70s Steelers.
Sure we do. Of course we do. Yeah, there's no question. And I mean, and I think that the reality is this. The reality is, let's be completely honest, there are more than one generation of Pittsburghers who were completely spoiled by the success that those 70s Steelers had. I mean, let's be completely honest. Think about the number of teams that have been in a position to win back-to-back Super Bowls. And the Steelers did it twice in a span of 6 years. They won 4 out of 6 years. Yeah. They won the Super Bowl. And so you get really, really spoiled in terms of what they did and what they were able to do and the success that they had with those teams, and then you think it's just going to continue, right? And even the Pirates to some extent, that you win in the early 70s, you beat Baltimore, and then you come back and you win again in the late 70s, and think of all the number of times that you had to beat the Big Red Machine throughout the 70s, and you couldn't quite get it done, or you couldn't get past the Dodgers or whatever, and you didn't quite get to the Super Bowl, the World Series or the NLCS or whatever, back then too. But you're winning 2 championships in a span of 8 or 9 years, right? And they haven't been back since. I mean, so that was an incredible time to be a Pittsburgh sports fan. And you almost think that, for young kids growing up then in the 60s or the 70s,